Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel Shilpa Data Insights. In this video, we are going to see one more interview question and a very famous function of Pyspark that is used in most of the projects of data engineering, and this is must to know. So the function that we will be covering today is the split function of Pyspark. So if you are aware, split function is also present in Python. So the same functionality is present in Pyspark and you can utilize that. So what does the split function do? So the split function actually splits the data into separate parts based on a particular pattern. That pattern could be anything, could be a simple comma or a hyphen or a particular regular expression. So in this, what you need to do is you need to go ahead. First of all, you need to import the split function. The split function is a function of Pyspark functionality. So inside the Pyspark module, you will be getting this split function. So in the split function, there are three parameters it will take. First is your string, second is your pattern, third is your limit. What does the split string do? String means whatever string you want to split. Let's say you have your name. In the name, you have your first name, middle name, and your last name. You want to split your complete name into three separate columns. One column is your first name, second column is your middle name, and third column is your last name. So you can split everything into three separate columns. And the pattern, in which pattern you want to separate. So whenever you write a name, complete name, what is it separated by? It is separated by a space. So the pattern here is actually a space. And limit means how many times you want to separate the string by that particular pattern. Let's say you want to separate it by 1. So you can put it 1. By default, it's -1. If you want to do it by 3, you can do it by 3. If you don't mention it, it will do it multiple times. If there are 10 separate patterns, similar patterns, it will go ahead and separate that string with that same pattern. So this is all theoretical. Let's go into the practical deep dive and let's see how exactly it works. Now, so what I will be doing is from the pyspark.sql.function, I will be importing two things. One is split, one is column. If you don't know how exactly do it, you can read out the documentation. It's simple. Let's say you have a module here. The module here is this pyspark.sql.functions. And inside this module, these two are the functions that I am importing. Either you can import everything, but the best practice is to import few columns or few functions that you will be using basically. Now I'm creating a dummy data here. First of all, I am importing everything. Then I will be creating a dummy data. And I'm having the columns as first name, middle name, last name, and my date of birth. Only 4 columns. And I'm creating a data frame. If you don't know how to create a data frame, please go ahead and watch the video first, in which I'll explain you how to create the data frame. I will pin that in the I button as well. You can go ahead and watch. And if you don't know how to actually create a schema and exactly how to use or visualize the schema, you can watch that video as well. And after that, I have actually created the data frame and I am showing that data frame and I'm doing a truncate equal to false. Means it will go ahead and display the whole content of my data frame. It's not going to truncate any data, because let's say if it's a phone number which is 10 digit and it's not accommodating in a column, it will go ahead and truncate. So therefore we use the truncate equal to false. If you want to know more about this, please watch my previous video. Please watch it in a sequence so that you understand what I'm explaining it today. Now, in this particular video, if you will see, the first name is there, middle name, last name, and my date of birth. Now, I want to split this date of birth. I want to get my year, my month, and my date. So this is YYY, MM, and DD format. So I want to see what is the year on which Juliet was born, and what is the month, and what is the date. So I will be separating this date of birth into 3 separate columns. How will I do that? So for that only, we have the split function. So if you know how exactly to add the columns, you use this with column method. So it is going to add a column. So what does this with column method will do? It will first use the string in which you want to create the column. Let's say you want to create a column named date of birth and year, because you will be extracting the year from it, right? Which is separated by hyphen. So I'm mentioning the column name here as date of birth year. Make sure you mention the column name inside the quotes, okay? So that it is a string format. Now I will be splitting the column. Which column I will be splitting? The date of birth column I will be splitting. And how exactly I will be splitting? I will be splitting it by hyphen. Why hyphen? Because here it is 1991-04, right? So I have to split it by hyphen so that I can get my date of birth separated and my month and my date. Now I have two arguments here, right? First is my column name, which is the date of birth. Second is the pattern in which I want to split that column. That is my hyphen. Now, in this, if I see my first element of my date of birth is my year. Second element of my date of birth is my month. And third element of my date of birth is my date. So, how will I get this first element? If you want to get the first element, you know, if you have a list format or a dictionary format, you mention with the index 0, right? So there is a function here called getItem that you can use, and you have to get the first element. The first element is actually index 0. So you are mentioning index 0. Similarly, I want to get my second column, which is named as date of birth of the month. And I'm splitting it by hyphen again. When I split it by hyphen, I want to fetch only the first element of it. That is the get item. And now, if I do a with column and date of birth date, and here the column is date of birth again, I want to get the date. That is a get item 2. Now, I want to display this. It will give me 3 extra columns here named year, month, and date. So if you will see, this is first name, middle name, last name. Date of birth is split to date of birth of year, date of birth of month, and date of birth of date. So this is one way how you can split using with column. There's multiple ways to do it. Let's go with the second way of it. The second method is simple. It's the same, but in that, what we used to do is here, we have to mention the split column every time in the with column. So what I will do is I will create a variable in which I will be storing this particular split column. I don't have to repeatedly write this code every time, right? So I can just use that particular variable. So for that, I'm importing the Pyspark and I'm using a split call variable, and I am using the split call method and getting the hyphen. I will be splitting the data by hyphen, and I will be splitting it by hyphen. Once I do that, I will have the get item 0. That is the first element. That is my year. Second element is my month, and the third element is my date. It's the same thing. Only thing is that I am putting the split column inside the variable inside the split column. Okay, so here is my output. It's the same as the previous one. Now let's say I'm using the split function of column class. So I don't want to use with column. I want to use a select statement and select the data, preferred data. Let's say there are thousands of columns, right, in your table, and you cannot go ahead and you want all the 1,000 columns. Let's say you just want 10 columns in a particular table in your data frame. So let's say in this case, I want the first name, I want the last name, and I want my year, month, and date, and my date of birth. Okay. So for that, I will be using the select instead of with column. I'm putting my first name, I'm putting my last name, and the date of birth, and I'm using the same split call function, the variable that I created, and using that variable, I'm getting the first element of the item, and I'm aliasing it with my year. In the previous case, I used the with column. So in the with column, I'm giving the year inside the string, inside the parameter of the with column. But in this case, you cannot do it in here, select, right? In this select, you have to alias something. So once you have got the data from this particular variable and getItem 0, you are aliasing it with year. Similarly, you are aliasing it with month and your date. And let's see what is the result. Here, the date of birth will also come. Now, let's say this is very repetitive, right? The date of birth is there, year is there, month is there, day is there. So, what will you do if you don't want this date of birth? Think about it. It's very simple, right? You just go ahead and remove the date of birth from here. And you will just have your first name, last name, year, month, and day. Now, let's move on to the next way of doing it. That is using the split and drop the splitted column. Same thing, you declare your splitted column with the help of the split function. You mention your column name and your hyphen, and then with column, you are mentioning what is the column name, that is your year. You are getting the first element from your splitted column, and then again the month, you are getting the second element out of it, and then date, you are getting the third element out of it. Don't get confused with this second because the index starts with 0. Okay, now these 3 columns are done. Now, as I said, this will be repetitive. Okay, so I don't want the repetitive thing. Let's say I will be just commenting this out, okay, and see what exactly is my result. The result is first name, middle name, last name, date of birth, year, month, and date. So now my requirement here will be, I don't want this date of birth. So how will I do it? Even with the help of with column, you can select the required columns by dropping those columns. You are not changing the actual data frame. You are creating a new data frame out of that actual data frame and dropping that particular column that's not needed. So this particular data frame required column can be reused later rather than the original data frame. If you want to do some manipulation on original data frame, that data frame is still intact, but you are creating a new data frame out of it. So this is how exactly you can create multiple columns out of a single column based on a particular pattern. How will you do it? We explained it in the complete video using the split function. I hope you understood how exactly the split function works. There are multiple ways how you can go ahead and use it. One is using the with column. Second is using the with column and the drop functionality. Third way is your select statement without using the with column. And even if you want to go ahead and modularize this particular thing and do a reusability of your code, then use the variable instead of the complete function, writing it down repeatedly. I hope you have understood everything, and if you have liked this video and learned something new, then hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and share it with your friends. Thank you so much for watching, and I wish you have a good day.